Welcome to the TIO Show. Thank you again for joining in, and thank you for all the feedback and all the input. And I've been noticing that people have been sharing, so that's amazing, and thank you. Today, what we're going to talk about is looking at like an inventory of your life of what things are working, almost like a reset button of evaluating like the year and kind of taking like a reflection. This is actually a really good time, and in some traditions, like the Jewish tradition, it's Rosh Hashanah, which is like a new year, and that time is to represent, kind of a reflection phase of what things have been working and what things are, you know, not, and then allowing us to make adjustments. I know for myself that, I've kind of had some certain milestones that I wanted to make sure that I met before a certain time, before the end of this month. And what I constantly do is see if I'm on track for those milestones and what has to happen afterwards. And, I also see if I've hit those milestones and kind of where my life is, and if things are getting a little bit easier or if things are still like a lot of chaos or there's resistance and things. This actually gives me an opportunity to see what things I need to put in order. So that's exactly what I did today. I woke up early in the morning and I thought, okay, there's a lot of things that I've been maybe prolonging or, thought that I needed to get certain things done. But today was a good time to start that discipline again of waking up early and just knocking out my checklist of whatever items were there. And the checklist can be something very simple as to like, making sure that all your affairs are in order. For myself, I know that there were some pending items that I've been holding on to for the past 5 or 6 months because I realized that they weren't priority at the time. There were other things that I had to get done before a certain deadline that I put before that. And that's what I mean by milestones, is really looking at the different things in your life, the day-to-day stuff, the things that have to be done like, every quarter, or the things that need to be done on a weekly basis, and kind of recategorizing and seeing what's priority and what can be pulled off. And the other thing is not to continue to pull it off and just say, okay, I'll get to it one day. You have to have certain milestones for even those things that may be like, not a lower priority, like a C list, like an A, B, and C list. And those C list items are things that I have in the back of my head that I try to get done before the end of November. So that way, like in December time, whatever my pending items are, whether it's A, B, or C on my checklist, I have like a month of a period where I can just go back and do kind of like a cleanup phase. And I didn't realize that this is actually not something what people do in their life. For me, it was just very, something I do second nature. Something that I just do for myself, so that way I can give a lot of wiggle room to make sure that holidays are accounted for, that, different things may come up, and just knowing that how to pace myself. And I give myself certain goals, even on the C list. So today when I woke up and I actually took care of a lot of the C list things, I actually was like, wow, I'm doing this a lot earlier than what I had actually projected. Because again, I typically have it as an October, November late in my head. But there were some things in my life that I was seeing were a little chaotic, and I was just like, okay, there's something that needs to probably get my attention of getting my affairs in order sooner than whatever I needed before. And so I just kind of gauge that and see. The reason why I say this is really important, because I think that as we're kind of closing out the year, the next, 3-4 months, it's like September kind of starts that period of time where things kind of change, seasons change. We're out of summer, kids are typically back in school, taxes have already been done depending on which part of the country you're in, and then it's giving you the time, a phase of like holidays. You got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you have Hanukkah, you have other holidays in between. Maybe there's other holidays in a different part of the country where you're at. So, and it's also a good time to kind of see like, what are we creating for next year? Like, what are our goals? Like, what are we looking to achieve? And I think that this is a great time for us to look at that, because I know that typically people look at, resetting or looking at goals typically at the end of the year, but I think it's actually better to do it in this time frame, September. And what I've realized is that over the last 20 years, this is typically when I start planning for next year. I start really creating what my goals are going to be for business, my personal life, and I kind of give myself some time to readjust that. So that way I can really start already creating the intention for 2021 and giving me some time to kind of complete 2020. And I would say that that's been a huge habit that I've had that's allowed me to be very successful in my career, and even my personal life, because then what I'm able to do is really see and take time to create what's next year going to look like, and see if it's feasible, not feasible, what are some realistic goals, and what were the measures that I put into place for this year, and did I actually meet them. I think that if you apply this not only in a business sense but your personal life, that you'll see that your life will start shifting a lot, that you'll start really hitting those goals and those milestones. I know a lot of people, make some goals, and then mid-year they're not even present to what those goals were that they made, for the New Year's resolution. Like, readjusting and seeing if they're on track or not. So I feel that this is a good time for us to kind of see and reevaluate 2020, where we were in January, what we thought the year was going to look like, what actually it did look like, what positives could we have walked away with, what are some things that we can still create by before the end of the year, because I feel that we have that extra buffer time, so that way we can really go back and see what are the things that are still available to us before the calendar year typically ends. And then it'll also give us a better perspective of what to create in 2021. I know for myself that I've really been trying to get clear of where I want to look at for 2021, and looking at it from a different perspective of just, in a business sense. I've always had it in a personal as well, but really looking at it in a whole different light because of 2020, of what it's provided, all the insights that COVID has provided, the homeschool, the relationships that are transforming and changing. And I've seen that there's been a lot of automatic, I'd say, readjustments or decluttering of my life in a lot of different ways. And when I saw that, first I thought it was actually a bad thing, because I'm like, wow, I've lost a lot of things that, hold true to my identity, and people that, were very near and dear to me. And I saw it as like a very negative thing, and suffered a lot of it. But then when I really thought about it later, the last couple of weeks, I thought, what's actually happening is that I'm being allowed to have space to create something completely new. And I'm being given an opportunity to say what that's going to look like for myself, and see if the right people, whoever they're going to be, are going to align with that. And I think that that's really important, because sometimes that when you're trying to elevate in your life, when you're trying to reset, when you're trying to have different goals and aspirations, the people around you may or may not be the right fit. And I know for myself, I work at a pretty quick pace that I'd like to get things done. Sometimes that's my lesson, that I can't rush the process, even though I'd like to. But what I've learned is that in order for you to reach those goals and milestone those journeys, sometimes you need to have a readjustment in your life of the inner circle, your people around you, meeting new people, and allowing to learn new things. And if you look at it from that angle and that aspect, you'll see that, there's a lot of opportunity. And for myself, I feel that that's where I'm at, that there's a lot of different things that I can create, that there's a lot of different opportunities that I have, and there's a lot of lessons that, I see that in the future that I will do things a lot different. And that comes from our, willingness to want to readjust our lives and look a certain way. Often we say we want a certain life, but then we're not willing to put in the work, or put in the commitment, or make some difficult choices that are going to allow that. And when I look back, just not at this year, but like the last 2 years, I'm like, wow, didn't think 2 years ago that, I'd be in this part of my life, but I also knew that I was committed to something of a different kind of life, one that was going to be a lot more fulfilling on a global level. Even though I was fulfilled on some levels, I didn't feel that all aspects of my life were being fulfilled. So I really looked and saw what needed to be readjusted. Didn't know what that was going to look like, had no clue, walked into the unknown, but really trusted and had faith. And today, when I reflect 2 years later, I'm like, wow, that was a journey. I did not even see that what was to come. But then with that, I've had like an accelerated amount of growth that I feel like the last 2 years is equivalent to like 10 or 15 years of growth that I would not have been able to see otherwise. So I think that this is a good opportunity for us to really see and be very conscious of what you're really creating out there and being very mindful of what you really want, because I think that sometimes we manifest more than we realize, good or bad. And so every time that there's something happening in my life, I kind of look and see, okay, how did I manifest this? How am I responsible? What are my actions that I took? Do I need to readjust the course? Do I need to make another action? And I think that, it's kind of like a redirect. It's like a different direction of where you thought your goal was going to look like, but the willingness to still say yes to the unknown. And I've felt that that's kind of the space that I've been in, that there's certain milestones that I needed to meet before I could even think through what I want 2021 to look like. I needed to have certain things of like decluttering in my life, like certain milestones that had to happen, because I'm like, I cannot create something over something that's incomplete for myself. And boy, was I intentional with my objectives, because completion comes not just from like personal tasks, but it also comes from completion of relationships, conversations, difficult things that maybe you haven't been able to say to others, that will allow a different space to open up. And I know that what I found out, that you cannot create anything new without completing what's already there. I've really been committed to do that. So I'm constantly looking and seeing what the gap is. The gap is meaning that, where I need to be and where I am, and like, what is the opportunity for me to put into place. So that actually gives me something that I can look and see of inventory of what I need to clean up and what I need to work on. And in other words, put integrity into place, like make sure that I'm fully equipped and aware of different things that maybe I wasn't, equipped for before. Example, something as small as like, my taxes. Maybe I used to outsource certain things, to a third party, or, not look at it due diligently as I have this year. So this year I had a whole different vision of it, of, okay, that's fine. If I'm going to delegate it next year, that's great. But there's certain things that I need to look at on an aspect for myself, so that I can see, learn, and grow where things are at, what worked, what didn't work, and how can I delegate and be more responsible on a weekly basis of what the accountability is for the people that take on those certain tasks, and what the accountability really for myself is, because at the end of the day, that accountability comes from me. What I say, not what the other people are helping me to meet those milestones. And I feel that if you really come from that element, you start taking more control of your life. You start seeing things in a very different perspective. I know that I've learned a lot of, I'd say ground level tasks this year that I don't think I've learned the last 20 years, because I've been in a different mindset, maybe more on of a micro macro level of looking at things in a different perspective. So this year I was really committed to see, okay, I have to see things more on a ground level, understand things better, because if I'm looking to create something bigger, I can't possibly do that if I don't look at ground level on my own life, to really see what the things are that maybe I wasn't really paying attention to because of time, or I felt I can delegate that task. But I feel that if we don't do this every so often in our life, we don't get to learn and see different aspects and allow growth and change to happen. So for myself, I know when I was talking to my accountant or my CPA, he was like, "Wow, you can have this somebody else do this for you, or you can just have me delegate and do it." And I said, "No, I think I'd really like to understand things a little bit better and have more clarity, so that way I can see when I project for next year, even budgeting, what I need to really account for that I wasn't accounting for." Because when you're not on the ground level of things, I think that there's a lot of things that we miss. Even if you're not looking at it from a business aspect, you're looking at it from a personal aspect. Just the fact that we have the opportunity this year to have homeschooling, to have our kids more at home, to have, different things closed. It's like it gives us an opportunity to see the ground level in our own lives. I got to see that in a way for my own personal life, with my kids, of like where their schoolwork was and so forth. And actually, the ground level, speaking of, I have my dog here, Teddy, again, it was like, wait, take ground level with me. So, that's another part. It's like ground level even with your pets or your animals or whatever it is. But I think that it's really important, and this is a time for us to really get perspective of our 2020 and look and see what our 2021 is going to look like, and really be intentional of what you're creating, and look and see where you can reinstore integrity in, where you can bring certain communication in that you weren't bringing in before because you were out of communication. I did that for myself today. There were some difficult things that I was like, oh, I just don't want to deal with anybody right now, so I just want to isolate for a second and not be in communication. Then I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't work. There's no integrity to that. I'm actually giving power over their circumstance versus like saying, no, this is the way it's going to look. So that's what I did this morning. I was like, okay, this is what's going on. Been out of communication, putting the communication right back in, and all the guilt or like the whatever feelings or the emotion come up, you just dispense it all, because you're taking control and you're having power over what has power over you. So that's kind of where I'm at, is looking at the aspects of my life that had been taking maybe power over me in a more emotional setting, and just saying, okay, I understand that, I got that, now what do I need to do to bring power back? I'm looking at that in all elements of my life, because I feel that in order for me to create something bigger and newer that I'm unaware of creating, you need different structures in your life. You need to be able to see things in a different angle. So I'm constantly looking for that. And, I don't think I really understand emotional turmoil until the last 2 years, and how it can really deter you from like getting your achievements in your life. But I also took the due diligent time to really say, okay, this time I'm going to look at things from a different angle. I'm going to allow myself that opportunity of getting more into the emotional base, getting more into the feeling base, to be able to also have a better perspective. So that way, when I do create something new, or when I do, get back into, my goals and things, I can have a different perspective that I never had before. So it was also scary, because that was not the version of myself that I knew to be. Also scary for a lot of the people in my life. They didn't see me the same way that maybe they see me my whole entire life, but I knew that this was important for myself. I knew that this was a time and opportunity for me to really be able to get into a certain zone that I don't feel I may or may not have the opportunity to create in the future. And I would be losing a lot of wisdom. I'd be losing a lot of different perspectives of, help serving people, help, create different business aspects in a different way, help improve my leadership qualities. Because if I wasn't doing this in my own life, then I'm not going to be the thought leader out there that I look to myself to be, to create. So we really have to try things newly, for us to create a different version of ourselves. And sometimes that can really disrupt your personal life, business life, the old version of you, but that's how you're going to create the new version of you. And I feel that you have to be so strong in your core to really know what's important to you and what direction you're going and what stays truth to you. And I think that the last 2 years, I kind of like allowed myself to flow more, to allow myself to be open more, because I was like, if I come into this knowing or think that I know, that I'm not going to learn certain things that, you know, I need to learn to be able to go to the next stage of my life. So I feel like much more well equipped right now for 2021 because of the time that I took to take a whole different aspect of my life, to create myself differently. And I'll be honest, it's been scary. There's been a lot of different emotions that I didn't even know existed before, because I'm very intentional on what I'm looking to create. And to let go of that, to let go of having that constant structure, discipline, and so forth. I was thinking, like, wow, some people live like this their entire life. And then I was like, well, okay, I've done that. I've tried that. I also see why my results in my life are showing up a certain way. And now how can I bring the two together and merge it and, you know, bridge the gap between that? And now I feel that I have a lot more power to do that because I've gone through it myself. So when you've gone through something yourself, you're a lot more powerful. I knew that I was very blessed and fortunate to be in a certain bubble of population, you know, and to not have a perspective that most people may not ever have the opportunity to have. So I took a lot of different trips the last 2 years that I typically wouldn't have taken. Why? Because it gave me a different perspective of the world. It gave me something beyond what I would be able to see from a whole different angle, and then kind of have that perspective to bring back to my drawing board, so to speak, and create something with that new information. So, you know, I wasn't really sure why I was going to certain places and places that I typically wouldn't normally choose to go, but I knew it was important, and I knew that I had to follow my intuition of knowing and trusting and believing that was for whatever reason that I needed to learn that. Still, I don't know to certain angles what that may look like, but I know that somehow, some way, it's going to spin back together. And, you know, I know that I can feel the momentum of now having that perspective and the other experiences that I have, and being able to, you know, have this time now to create something new for 2021 that I don't even know what it's going to look like. It's giving me a new sense of like accomplishment that, you know, I would never have had before. And it's been scary because I've had to take a lot of risks. I've had to take a lot of different angles that I typically wouldn't take, because I've been a very logical person. And the last years, I would say that I've really learned to be more on my intuitive side, learn to, you know, kind of see, okay, what would the non-logical look like, and let me take those steps and see what that looks like, because then how can I possibly know if I haven't done that in my own life? So now I feel that I'm in the place of my aspect of my life where I'm like, okay, I really freely did that for the last 2 years. I've also done the other side, which was being very disciplined, very structured, very intentional. And now I can kind of have the two bridge together and be able to speak on a very different element, create on a different element. And that's very exciting because I feel that like the last 2 years has given me the opportunity to do that, not just in my business aspect of my life, but my personal aspect, because now I really get to create, okay, what is it that I want to have in my personal life? Like, what is it that I want to create? And what is the cost for that? Am I willing to, you know, make the certain choices that I made in the past, maybe of giving up certain things in my personal life to have the fulfillment in my business life? And did it work? Did it not work? What was different in there? Like, could I have added anything new? So I feel that that's a space that we're kind of in right now, and it gives us a great opportunity to really not rush things, see things from a very different angle and perspective, and kind of take an inventory of our life of like, you know, what are we looking to really create? And you know, I was on a Tony Robbins event this past weekend, and I got to see for myself, wow, like, you know, the Tony Robbins event a few years back, like, where was I at then? What was the feedback that I was getting then? What was the, you know, things that I was learning then, and where am I now? And how much growth have I done? And what are certain things that like are basic stuff that I already know that I can reapply? If you bring this aspect to your life, all areas of your life, you are always creating a win situation for yourself. Even though your life sometimes looks like it could be disrupted or looks like you're at ground zero, you're really not, because the person that you were yesterday doesn't have the same experiences that you do today. So always come from that perspective, because I know even for myself that certain aspects of what I saw success, monetary, titles, accomplishments, I didn't have that. And I got to see myself in a whole different view of myself. And I started losing lack of confidence of who I was on my core. And then I had to realize, wait, those external things don't define me. Those don't define my core. It's easier said than done. Trust me. I've lived it. I've gone through it. When people say it, I don't, I mean, I want to be straight that it's a very difficult place to go. And I know that because I've done that myself. So I really get to see how your identity gets very attached to certain aspects, and then you're not able to grow. I feel that by letting go of some of those aspects, you're able to create a better, more expanded version of yourself. And the expanded version of yourself gets to show up in a whole different way. And, if you go back to certain trials and tribulations that you've had over your life, and like what they've done, how they've shaped you and molded you to the person you are today, I can say that I'm so much better equipped today because of the different adversities and the different challenges that I've faced the last couple of years, that I feel almost like, okay, there isn't going to be anything that I'm not able to take on in a very different perspective. Like, I feel I can really run a company at a whole different level now that I don't feel I was able to run before. Why? Because I wasn't able to understand the emotional component of things and how that drives human behavior. I was looking at it from a very black and white business perspective, but I didn't have that emotional component of why certain people do behaviors of what their emotions drive them to do, and what was the the shadow selves of what that was projecting, and how does that actually help or not help shift the corporate culture that you're creating. And then now I get to see what are the people that I want to bring on board that are going to allow me to have the corporate culture that I want to look and create, and what are the qualities that I need to have, and what are some things that maybe were there that I wasn't looking to see with a certain people and elements of my life that I continue to ignore. And they were saying that. So it was nothing on their level, it was more of myself, that I was not taking responsibility of listening to people at that level, because I saw them as a very different way. And that is powerful, and that's also detrimental, because when people are saying certain things to you, you have to listen in a different aspect. I feel that the last 2 years I've gotten that perspective because of the different journeys that I've taken the last 2 years of making some difficult decisions, making some different choices that I wouldn't typically make, and look and kind of see, okay, when you make those choices and you go that different direction, what is the cause and effect? And I believe that, if I look at the aspect of where I am in my life, I can say that everything is cause and effect, good or bad. And so now when I come from that powerful place, I can really start owning the good and the bad in my life, and start not letting it have control over me, and say, okay, great. I've learned that. I've done that. I've, learned that lesson. I've seen what that can look like if you go that certain direction or that certain move. But I also know that, like, I have no regrets that I made those decisions, that I was not sitting in the back of my head wondering, like, what if I never did that? What would life look like? And I feel that most people don't live that powerful life because the unknown is scary. The unpredictable is scary. I know for myself, I hate unpredictability, but I knew that in order for me to go the next level in my life, in order for me to grow at a certain velocity, I needed to let go of unpredictability. But now I feel that, okay, I've done that, gauge that. Now there's a certain level of unpredictability that I'm okay with, but there's a certain level of stability that no matter what, I'm going to have to need in my life. So I'm going to have to make a lot of different choices in my past that maybe I didn't put myself first, and that maybe I thought a different aspect of myself. Like, oftentimes we're taught, like, to be a martyr, to, like, self-sacrifice, and, to not be selfish. And I've learned that, through my upbringing. And what I've seen is it's great to have that aspect, however, not at the expense of yourself. And, I'm still open to that because I'm still in the exploration phase, meaning that how can you still live like that, but then not put yourself at risk? And I know that there's a lot of cultural differences. And that's one of the things that, I'm looking to bring, is like the Eastern and the Western, and bridging the two together, because I feel that I've been very blessed and fortunate to have a very global perspective on life, and to be able to have the resources to travel to many different countries and see things in a different angle. And with that, I don't take that for granted, because I feel that there's a purpose and a reason for that. And that gives me a different perspective that maybe one would not be able to see if they didn't have those experiences, if they didn't take the time to look at things in a different perspective. So remember that for whatever you're looking to create in your life for 2021, that, start thinking about the way that life is going to look, and what is really important to you, and what are you willing to do differently that you may have not been willing to do then. And then, we also can't sit and complain and have that victim mentality of, like, well, I don't want to do X, or like X can't happen, or, I'm scared of it, because at the end of the day, it's your own personal choice. It's the ownership, it's responsibility, and you have to do that for yourself. And I know that, like, it's easier said than done, because everything that I'm saying, I'm a living example of. But I knew that in order for me to, like, maybe, stop some of the people pleasing skills, that was something that I always revert back to, that I had to have new behavior come in my life. I had to start putting stronger boundaries. It was the most difficult thing, but I also knew what was needed. So sometimes we have to put things that are needed to have that different aspect, or that different perspective in life. And are you willing to do that? And if you're not, then you can't sit and complain about certain things. So I feel that this is kind of where we should kind of see, like, the next month or so, 2020, as, what worked, what didn't work in all aspects of our life, and really start thinking of what 2021 looks like. And being very intentional of, what that 2021 is going to provide for you, because I feel that for the first time ever, that 2020, the world is kind of in a very different place because of COVID, and people are in a different aspect of themselves, seeing things differently that they may have not seen before. So we get to create something on a global level now, together as a collective, that we may have never ever been able to do before. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and that's why sometimes, even for myself, when life happens and I'm like, wow, I don't know if I can, keep showing up for the show, or keep showing up. I'm like, no, I need to show up, because I'm showing up for myself. I'm taking power over my circumstances. I'm not going to allow whatever my goals are to be shattered by circumstance. So remember that, in order for you to persevere to what you really want, there's going to be choices that you have to make that you may not want to make. So again, thank you for joining in. I look forward to your feedback. I look forward to speaking to all of you guys and seeing how much insight that you're getting from each episode. So that way, I can continue to evolve, grow, kind of create something. And you could say that this is kind of like my mock trial, or like my probational period, or like, gauging to see what's working and not working, even with the show, because I always look at certain aspects, which is your input, the numbers, the algorithms, and seeing what people are really resonating with. So again, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it. Continue to share, and until next time.